Good afternoon, and welcome to Praxis Peace Institute's Friday Forum. I'm Georgia Kelly, the Director of Praxis. Today, we are delighted to welcome a longtime activist, educator, and citizen diplomat. Jim Garrison is the president of Ubiquity University, a unique higher education option, which we will talk about today. But earlier, he was president and co-founder with Mikhail Gorbachev of the Gorbachev Foundation and the State of the World Forum conferences. The purpose of the State of the World Forum was to assess world politics at the end of the Cold War and the possibilities for peace in the emerging world order. The forum became one of the most influential conferences during that time, and they were convened in San Francisco and New York. They were attended by presidents, statesmen, and young leaders from 6 continents. Garrison was also executive director of the Esalen Soviet American Exchange Program, and he has a long history as a citizen diplomat. He's the author of America as Empire, Global Leader, or Rogue Power. We will revisit this today also. So welcome, Jim. It's great to have you with us today.
Good to see you again, Georgia. It's been
That's
some time.
It's been a while. Yes, I was very involved in the State of the World Forum as a harpist. I used to play at their events. So, Jim, you have a very varied background, and certain things have been consistent in your life, though: civic activism, education, and bringing people together across barriers and ideologies. Before we get to your current work, I'd like to revisit some of your earlier projects, specifically with the Esalen Soviet Exchange Program, the Gorbachev Foundation, and the State of the World Forum, whichever you want to talk about in whichever order. I know they all connect, but first, what got you interested in Soviet American affairs initially? And secondly, tell us what motivated you in organizing the State of the World Forum.
Oh boy, that's a big question.
I know.
The short answer is that when I got to Cambridge to do my PhD, Cambridge University, I wrote a dissertation on the question of why it is that after several billion years of evolutionary life on planet Earth, our species in our generation has brought the entire life process to the brink of extinction through thermonuclear war. And I found that as I would talk to people about what I was writing, they would always say, well, of course we need nuclear weapons because of the Russian threat. And I found that kind of extraordinary that we would be willing to destroy all planetary life because we don't like somebody. And so in the fall of 1982, if I remember correctly, a wealthy donor paid for me to go to the Soviet Union for 2.5 months. I traveled all over the country and I realized something that's really shaped my politics to the present day, that it is simply not the case that we need nuclear weapons because of the Russian threat. It's actually the other way around. We need a threat to justify our weapons. And once I got clear that that was the reality, my life changed and I dedicated the next 10 years, actually nearly 20 years, to working with Russians to show that Americans and Russians and Europeans and Russians, in fact, people from all over the world are perfectly capable of getting along with one another. And that motivated me then eventually to meet Mr. Gorbachev when I was over in the Soviet Union during the 1980s. While many of my friends were specializing in people-to-people diplomacy, I was interested in the Central Committee. I was interested in the Politburo. I was interested in the leadership because I had studied totalitarian systems while I was at university. And so I got familiar with a number of the senior officials, and pretty soon I was hanging out with people in the Politburo. And long story short, I finally was introduced to Mikhail Gorbachev in December of 1991 after mobilizing what we called the Russian Winter Campaign. We brought dozens of aircraft to Russia, what was then the Soviet Union, loaded with humanitarian relief, etc. And it turned out, Georgia, you may remember this. I ended up being the last foreigner that Mikhail Gorbachev received in his Kremlin office before he resigned.
Mm.
And one of the first ones to meet him then in January of 1992. And we started a 10-year relationship through 9/11, basically, to convene leadership groups around the world through the Gorbachev Foundation and State of the World Forum. But working with Gorbachev was one of the highlights of my life. And I would add that we did the State of the World Forums, as you indicated, between 1995 and the year 2000. 9/11 happened. We decided to disband them for obvious reasons. And then we reconvened the State of the World Forum last year in 2025 for 2025 to 2030, the same time period, because the world is in an equally critical situation now for completely different reasons.
Yes. I wanted to follow up a little bit about the Cold War because it seems like it's never ended. And we did have that promise of a peace dividend, which sort of melted away. So I wanted to ask you, when the Cold War supposedly ended in 1991, the Warsaw Pact countries and their armies disband, but NATO grew larger, going from 12 countries in 1991, when the Soviet Union dissolved, to 32 member countries today. So that's more than three times. Did you see this expansion, or do you see this as a missed opportunity that might have allowed for the peace dividend we were promised? And how do you view it in light of everything that's going on today?
Oh boy, that's a huge question. I would say, in my view, the U.S. actions after the collapse of the Soviet Union were the worst strategic mistake maybe in modern history that condemned the world to the pathway to the war in Ukraine and condemned the world to endless U.S. expansionism. And I'd like to fill this out in the following way. The genius of Mr. Gorbachev is that he understood that the Cold War, as he put it, was an insane way to interact. You know, if you and I are interacting, Georgia, and you have grenades on hair trigger alert, I've got grenades on hair trigger alert. That is no way to build a relationship. So what Gorbachev said is that there's an opportunity to end the Cold War, to create a single security zone between Europe and the Pacific and bring the Soviet Union, Europe, and the United States together for common heritage and to build what he calls a global civilization. He said that he was willing to take the first move if the United States would promise not to expand NATO to the east, which it did. And based on that, he withdrew all the Soviet troops from Eastern Europe. He disbanded, as you said, the Warsaw Treaty Organization, and he allowed the Germans to be reunited, which was an extraordinary act of statesmanship and belief in the human future. And what happened when the Soviet Union collapsed is that the neocons, you all know the story, Paul Wolfowitz, who was the deputy director of the Deputy Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon, wrote the Defense Guidance Memorandum that was released in March of 1992, basically saying, this is our opportunity, not for a global civilization, but to break up Russia, make sure that no power on earth, including China, is able to challenge the United States. And they even had maps showing the breakup of Russia into five different countries to make sure that the United States corporate elites could go in and extract all kinds of commodities and so forth and so on. And that began NATO's expansion from 12 countries in 1989 to 32 countries today. And Vladimir Putin, like Yeltsin before him and like Gorbachev before him, they all said, we're not communist anymore. They wanted to join NATO. They wanted to join the European Union. And the United States refused. because it wanted perpetual war and it wanted to expand NATO and create this unipolar moment, as it's been called, of complete full spectrum dominance over the entire planetary geostrategic system. That attempt on the part of the United States has failed, but whether it was Clinton or Obama or Trump 1 or Biden or Trump 2, the neocons in the military industrial complex have driven U.S. policy, as we see they're doing in the Middle East right now with the Israelis committing genocide against the Palestinians and gearing up as we speak for a full frontal attack on Iran to exact regime change. And what has distinguished Vladimir Putin is his ability to not only rebuild Russia, take on the United States, and defeat the United States and the NATO alliance in Ukraine, which is happening, but he's also been working with Xi Jinping in China and other countries around the world to create an alternative to the US dollar, which is going to end up through the BRICS coalition uh, to basically do more to undermine and erode the US imperium than any other single thing that could be achieved on the battlefield. So that's why I say that the refusal of the United States to take up Gorbachev, Yeltsin, and Putin's offer for a single security system that embraces all of them is the greatest strategic mistake in modern times. It's led to an unmitigated disaster geostrategically. I believe that Ukraine is going to go down in history as the death knell of the American empire. And when empires fall, democracies cannot stand. So we're seeing the collapse of the collective West, we're seeing the collapse of the American empire, and we're seeing the collapse of American democracy simultaneously as a result
Mhm.
of the takeover of the United States government by the neocons.
Yeah.
It's literally as simple as that. I mean, there's a lot of details, but in a short little interview, that's as concisely as I can put at least what I believe
Yes.
about the last 30 years.
Yeah, I totally understand this, and I know how hard it is to make this succinct. So I really appreciate what you were just able to do. And I want to just bring up something because, there's all this propaganda that Russia's trying to take over Europe or trying to take over the world. And yet, when you look at the reality on the ground, the US has nearly 800 military bases around the world, and Russia has fewer than 12. So who's really looking to take over the world? I mean, it's the juxtaposition of it, and yet what people believe is so bizarre in my mind to just look at
Yeah.
what's really happening on the ground. But I want to go now to the book that you wrote, America as Empire. And you called for Americans to see themselves as in a transitional empire, one whose task was to not to dominate, but to seed the next generation of global governance with a vision that would make the need for empire obsolete. You wrote that book 22 years ago. So, what do you think of the ideas in it today? I know you just talked about some of them. Do you see that US policy has derailed any of this possibility for a vision, or do you see places where it's emerging? And if you do, can you identify some of those?
Yeah, the thesis of the book America's Empire was that the United States needs to be viewed as an empire. And what I did is juxtapose the arc of American imperial progress uh, with the arc of imperial rise and fall of other imperial system. And I actually liken the American imperium to the imperium in ancient Athens. Ancient Athens was considered the light on the hill, the
Mm,
one democracy in the world. and it became powerful after the defeat of the Persians. And we had the golden age of Athens, and then they got seduced into the Peloponnesian War. And once they began perpetual war against Sparta, they ended up in one catastrophic failure and loss after another until finally Athenian democracy collapsed. The Athenian Empire collapsed, and Athens never rose again.
Mhm.
So we're in the same kind of situation with the United States. The light on the hill, supreme power, perpetual war, collapse. Externally, as Russia, China, Iran, India, Brazil, and 100 other nations begin to come together against the United States as it's weakened, and the collapse of the American democracy and the rise of the tyrant. That's what Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is not an exception to the rule. He's the exemplification of what happens with the corruption of power.
Well put. I think, one of the problems, and I'm going to go on to the university in a minute, but at when the Soviet Union collapsed, and we looked at it in the West as the triumph of capitalism, as if we won the Cold War. And this attitude, I think, was so destructive, and I'm sure you see that too. But we have this American entitlement that we're entitled to rule the world. We have this thinking in our society that has been so destructive since the end of the what could have been the end of the Cold War. And I just wondered if you have anything more you want to say on that before we move on to Ubiquity University.
Well, it's just an extraordinary tragedy that a
Mhm.
country with such a rich legacy, resources, capaciousness, and vision would succumb to unbridled, rapacious destruction of the planet and communities around the world. I mean, if you look honestly at the legacy of the American century, it's been one of the most catastrophic empires in the history of the world. I mean, we came out of World War II, not only the greatest power in the world, but we had 1,200 bases all over the world. We had complete global hegemony. We produced 65% of the gross national product of the entire planet. We could have done anything. And what did we do? We proceeded to rape and pillage. Look at the last 80 years. We've decimated the environment with an economic system foisted on the world by the US military and global institutional system, neoliberal capitalism. We've wiped out indigenous peoples worldwide. We've invaded or coercively manipulated with regime change and all kinds of election manipulation, all that over 100 countries from
Mhm.
1945 to 2026.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. There's been no empire in history that's done the damage to environment and people more than the United States of America. It is shameful. And as you say, Georgia, we go along thinking we're God's gift to the world, and we're the greatest democracy, and we're the biggest. Hey, listen to Ted, what's his name, the senator from Texas.
Cruz?
Yeah, and the president. Everybody thinks that America is God's gift to humanity. It's been a curse.
Another chosen people.
Yeah, another chosen people. It's like the Israelis committing
Yep.
genocide in Gaza. Israel has turned 2,000 years of Judaism on its head
Mhm.
and become like the United States. The United States and Israel are two sides of the same diabolical coin. And we all
Indeed.
need to understand that.
Right. Now I'm going to go from that. I think you've given people a lot to think about, and I really am interested in watching this video when it's over too. Um, I want to go from citizen diplomacy now to how you moved into education, because I think this is also an interesting trajectory in your life. But you became the president of Wisdom University, which was founded by theologian Matthew Fox, who I also knew. And now you're president of what's called Ubiquity University. And I want you to tell us something about it, how it differs from other universities, and what is the overriding purpose of this type of education? How do you see it filling the gap in the normal university programs?
Yes, good question. I meandered a bit after 9/11 and the kind of closure of my relationship with Mikhail Gorbachev from 1991 till 2001, 2002. Although I got many opportunities to see him subsequent to that. But in 2004, I was invited to become president of the University of Creation Spirituality, which, as you say, was founded by Matthew Fox, a Dominican priest, but it had gone bankrupt because of fiscal mismanagement and so forth. And so I was brought in to do a turnaround by one of the faculty at Pila, Colorado. And I turned it around and thought there's a real opportunity to reinvent education in accordance with Plato's three great virtues, truth, beauty, and goodness. And so we created an extraordinary university that emphasizes left brain learning and right brain learning. And we transitioned to Ubiquity University in 2012, 2013. And we've been going strong ever since. It's a wonderful experience. It is breaking new ground. We do something that virtually no university in the world does. We partner with non-academic institutions, and the students take their courses, pay the partner, and then when they take a certain number of courses, they can come into Ubiquity University and get a master's or a PhD degree. We're accredited through the Global Accreditation Council based in The Hague. We are the first and only university anywhere in the world that has an extraterrestrial studies program leading to master's and PhD degrees. We have partners in therapeutic psychedelics, partners in learning the language of consciousness, telepathy, etc. It's an extraordinary. So just go to ubiquityuniversity.org, any of you who are interested in a really, it's a completely new kind of education based on the most ancient ways of learning and value,
Do you
holistic learning.
have any philosophy or politics history?
Yeah, well, our philosophy is that the left and right brain need to be integrated for learning to be real and long lasting. So most schools are based purely on memorization that you then regurgitate, when you take your tests.
And then
But the
forget.
data shows that 90% of everything you memorize for a test is lost within 30 days. But if you learn collaboratively, learn through prose and poetry, left brain, right brain,
Mhm.
and are engaging in the pursuit not only of truth and goodness, but the cultivation of beauty, what happens is the transformation of your soul, what Plato called the enlargement of the soul. So that's what we're about. And at the same time, we take stands. I've taken a stand as president of the university against Donald Trump and the completely corrosive way that he has damaged the institutions of this country. I have taken a stand on Gaza and the genocide of the United States and Israel in Gaza. We have taken a stand on the whole issue of ICE and the uh, rounding up of the illegal aliens, as they're called here in the United States. It's preposterous what is going on. And so education in a real sense is not an abdication of responsibility. It is the application of the kinds of responsibilities that emanate out of a holistic learning system where truth, the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of beauty, and the pursuit of goodness are all intertwined in a single enlargement of the soul.
Yeah, this is really wonderful. I so appreciate having you on the program today and hearing your wisdom. And I want to open it up at this point for anyone who wants to ask questions, and it may take a few minutes before people do, but um, there's so many areas we could still visit,
Mhm.
politically, educationally, because I think one thing that's been frustrating, at least was frustrating to me in university education, is the rote part of it, is the disconnected part. I
Totally.
remember when I first learned
Totally.
about the Great Books University, I think it was, somewhere in New
Mhm.
Mexico, St. John's, I think it's called, where they learned things that were connected, the architecture, the history, the way people lived, the culture. It was all learned in a package. It wasn't separated like a war here and a war there. It was integrated. And we didn't learn integrated. So anyway, I think that was something that you've been talking about and are doing, which is
Yeah. If it isn't integral, it's not worth it, folks.
right.
I mean, we've seen the damage done to the planet by, academic institutions. Basically, Harvard Business School churns out psychopaths.
That's their
I mean, think
psychopaths
about
are
it.
us.
They're trained to
Right.
eliminate empathy, compassion, any kind of goodness, and focus exclusively on profit, whether you damage people or planet. And they call that success.
Yeah.
That's a derangement of the soul. That's a malignancy of the spirit. And it's cultivated as if this is the wave of the future. Look what we're doing to ourselves.
Yeah. Look
I
at
went to
AI
Harvard.
now.
I know Harvard. I went to Cambridge. I went to the elite schools.
You know what
And
they're
that's
like.
one reason why I founded Ubiquity University. They're positively medieval at Harvard.
Mm,
It's all scientific reductionist.
right.
It's all based on rote.
And
It's all conventional.
yeah,
It's really extraordinary.
indeed. Does nobody want to ask anything or say anything? Give a comment? I don't feel like ending it yet, so I hope somebody does. Maybe not.
Kimberly, you look like you want to say something. What do you want to say?
You're mute, Kimberly, if you want to say anything.
No, I'm unmuting.
Right.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good, good, good. I actually just want to know in terms of, when Mr. Trump is gone, how long do you think that we can reestablish or set a new trend with the Soviet Union so that we're moving more in collaboration, or is that just a wild dream of mine?
I think the downward arc of the American imperial system is inexorable. I believe that Trump's madness is accelerating the demise of the United States. I think that the world has concluded that the United States is deranged and has become identified as unreliable, unpredictable, and sadistic, particularly given what we're doing with Israel in Gaza. And I think the world is turning away from the United States. To use a Chinese metaphor, the United States has lost the mandate from heaven. And I think the mandate from heaven is shifting from the United States to China, from the Western colonial powers to those countries around the world, the global majority basically in Asia and Africa and Latin America that were colonized by the West. So what we're seeing is simultaneously the collapse of Western civilization, the collapse of the American imperialism, the collapse of American democracy, and I would say the collapse of Judeo-Christianity.
Mm.
I think that Gaza and the genocide in Gaza and the blasphemy of this board of peace and what the
Mm.
Israelis and the United States are doing is so egregious that Judaism will not recover.
That's interesting.
Judaism has been soiled by a political ideology of Zionism that is racist and has become genocidal. And the fact that not only the Israeli government, but a massive majority of the Israeli people and the major Jewish institutions around the world are supporting the genocide and eliminating, to the best of their ability, any dissent in the United States. Look what's happened on the campuses. Look what's happened in the media. And as John Mearsheimer, the great international relations, basically the dean of international relations at the University of Chicago, said, the control of Israel over the United States is unprecedented in all of recorded history as far as he knows it. It's the first time in recorded history where a small little country has dominated the empire and tells the empire what to do.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary.
And yet, even to talk about it,
Mhm.
you're charged with being anti-Semitic.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how malignant the situation has become. But mostly people outside the United States, even in Europe, know what the truth is and are just biding their time. So I don't believe that the United States will recover. I think the corruption of the system, I've been living in Washington, D.C. Trump is not the exception. He's the exemplification of a system that has been corrupted by perpetual war for nearly 100 years now, and in which the military industrial complex has basically taken over the organs of government and the direction of U.S. foreign policy. And what we're seeing right now, ICE, is basically an attempted authoritarian takeover of this country. I would be surprised if we even have an election in November, because Trump is going to do everything he can. He's already seizing voting machines. And just imagine what's going to go through the polity of the globe when Israel and the United States attack Iran and Iran fights back. There's going to be a mess. And then you're going to have November elections. This guy, I'm telling you, we need to expect martial law to be declared. So all this, and it may be that it doesn't work out. It may be that he has a heart attack, or somehow he goes the way of all flesh, and somehow the Democrats may find a spine. But right now, there's nobody in the Democratic Party that is capable of taking on Trump. Gavin Newsom is, he's verbal, but he's not doing anything. And neither is AOC and neither is Chuck Schumer, because the corruption of the system has consumed both parties in different ways. And we Americans need to understand that we're done. And we may perpetuate for a few more decades, for sure. We'll be a major power, but we have broken ourselves. And it's worth just noting that the great historian, William Durant,
Mhm.
wrote The Story of Civilization, 15 volumes.
I've got them
Uh,
all right behind me.
Yeah. I've got them. I've read them
You do.
all, but I think the last two uh, um, said that civilizations and empires don't aren't killed. They almost always commit
Right.
suicide.
Yeah.
And look at
Self-destruct.
the United States. Nobody's doing this to us. We're doing it to ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves. Come on, man.
Such an upbeat program today.
No. But I mean, this was a deep question. I was trying to give you,
Right. No,
at
this is
least my
good.
answer.
I know
So, so
Jerry.
let me just
Okay.
say one thing.
Yes.
I think the way out is obviously we have to take a stand. And, no King's Day and, march in solidarity with the immigrants and to vote as much as we can, obviously. But more deeply, what is necessary is the activation of a new paradigm for human consciousness. How do we begin to look beyond empire and beyond polarization with a new way of being in the world that we can begin to catalyze for the future? That's what we're trying to do with the State of the World
Right.
Forum,
Right.
is how do we create a new paradigm? And if I could just say another word on this,
Sure.
Georgia, because I think it's worth you guys just thinking these thoughts.
Right.
When we began to think about how does one put together a new State of the World Forum in a moment in time when there's no commonly held value system, people can't connect the dots anymore. Nobody really knows what's going on. So I thought about it and I thought, well, we can start with what can one say is fundamentally true, no matter who you are or where you are in the world. And there are four things that I would say are fundamentally true. Number one, we're all facing accelerating planetary ecological collapse. That's true, period. Number two, we're all experiencing deepening instability and turbulence at every level of human affairs. Just think about it. That's true. And that's why anxieties, depression, self-harm, suicides, abuse are proliferating all over the world, not just the United States. People have lost track. We're caught up in vectors of turbulence going in every which way, and we're losing our mooring. And number three, we've unleashed exponential, completely unregulated artificial intelligence. And number four, technologically advanced non-human intelligences are here on Earth. The extraterrestrials are here. Trump just announced it yesterday. If you think about those four data points, what emerges are four intelligences: human intelligence, nature intelligence, artificial intelligence, and cosmic intelligence. So when I talk about a new paradigm, that's what I'm talking about. That's what the State of the World Forum is trying to catalyze. We're dealing with four intelligences on planet Earth, folks.
Mhm.
And that means that humanity needs to learn the language of consciousness because you communicate with other sentient beings through telepathy, right? And so we're in fact offering a $100,000 award for any of you who are interested. How do you bring the intelligences together collaboratively to co-create a flourishing future?
Oh, we have to talk about this another time.
But so there's a lot of possibilities inherent in the crisis, and that's what I want to underscore. We're in a crisis. We're in a meta crisis. We're in a polycrisis of unprecedented proportions. We're about ready to destroy ourselves, and the opportunity vectors are as immense proportionally as the crises are deep. So how do you, in this time of turbulence, track the opportunity vectors? That's the key.
That's
Because
another
we're
program.
at a moment, we're in a once in a species moment.
Hmm.
This is the greatest time to be alive in the history of the world. It's a time to live large,
Or
to
not at
go
all.
big or go home.
Right. Now, I know Jerry had his hand up earlier. Do you still want to say something? If you do, you're mute.
And then I should,
No, George, I think I think I'll pass.
Okay.
I think the later part of this discussion was as much as for a response as I would have gotten to my question.
Okay. And then Patricia, you had something, you had your hand up? Patricia? You're mute if you wanted to
Yeah,
say. Okay.
try to find the right button here. Well, you just partly answered it now. Is before you just answered this, I was feeling a lot of doom and gloom and hopelessness. And it's like, okay, so what? We're all, we're doomed. So I wanted to hear the other side of it. Is there anything that's different now that leads us in a different direction that can foster some integration? And if so, what is it? And I think you kind of answered that part to the degree I understand it, but at least I know you're looking at a different view. And the last thing you said astounded me. It's like, hey, this is a great opportunity, which is the way I like to look at things.
mhm.
So that gives me hope. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Great.
Yeah, I'm more optimistic and hopeful than I can remember ever being because I'm working on the future.
Mhm.
Just to take in that the ETs have shown up to help us. And the central realization that we humans have to come to is that not only are we not alone, we can't make it alone. We need these other intelligences now. And so our task is to learn how to communicate intelligibly with other sentient beings telepathically, which is how they communicate. If you're going to communicate with a tree, if you're going to communicate with your dog or your cat, if you're going to communicate with a dolphin, if you're going to communicate with the ET, you got to learn the language of telepathy. And we have major programs, by the way, a whole global strategic initiative between Ubiquity University and the State of the World Forum to teach the language of consciousness. It's extraordinary.
Mhm.
And people are coming in from all over the world. So the worse the situation gets, the more potentiated the opportunities become. And our job is to track the opportunity vectors. So that's what I'm doing through Ubiquity University. That's what I'm doing through the State of the World Forum. And I feel robust and energetic. But it's a matter of understanding from a meta-historical view that the United States empire is in collapse mode and that democracy is being shattered. Not by Trump. He's just he just is present at the White House as this comes in, but he was elected by that corruption that actually has infused the polity now for decades, since Eisenhower's warning of the military-industrial complex. The chickens have come home to roost. And the way the United States has been treating people outside the United States, now they're just treating people inside the United States.
So are you saying that, I mean, do I understand that you're saying that the collapse is expectable, and that I made that word up. It's just the way things happen given the
Yeah,
history.
yeah,
But that
Yeah.
There's other things that can be brought in here at this point in time, and that's what you're working on. And it has to do with learning the language of consciousness in a different way, or at all.
Yeah.
Or at all, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I believe that there's certain inevitabilities to history. We all die. Everything that lives dies.
A big
There's no,
act.
there's no exceptions, right?
No fun.
Empires rise and empires fall.
Mhm.
That's just the way it is. Our empire rose, and like the empires before it, it's falling. And once the empire falls, there are very few, if any, examples in history of where it kind of resuscitates itself because there's a certain internal momentum to life. And so that's not doom and gloom. That's just reality.
And
And I think
hopefully
a
a
lot
new
of the
life.
doom and gloom is based on some emotion that you have about the reality. And I try to live with ruthless realism, as
I
Gorbachev
like
would
that.
put it,
Yeah.
and then just track the opportunity vectors. And so that's what I'll leave you with. But thank you, Georgia, for your kindness in bringing me in. I hope that I've provoked some kind of thinking and debate, and we'll see you down the trail.
Yeah, I'll contact you after, well, I'll send you the video to this, but I'd like to get together with you and have a longer chat.
Sure, with pleasure.
Great.
Pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
everybody.
much. Thank you so much, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Great to
Thank you. You're
speak.
terrific.
Thank you.
So, wait a minute, I'm going to stop the recording.